Hello, world. Happy Webinar Wednesday. It's Dr. Deborah Thompson here, and I am so pleased to welcome my friend, Dr. Charlotte Lacroix, who is the CEO/President of Veterinary Business Advisors. Thank you so much, Dr. Lacroix, for joining us today.
Thank you, and hello, world.
I love your background. I think it's gorgeous. So I was thinking, since your bio is just so epic, I would definitely not do it justice if I were to introduce you fully. So if you don't mind, could you introduce yourself? And then we would love to learn about how you got to where you are today.
Absolutely. And thank you again for the opportunity to appear on your show. I really am excited about it. So the story of Charlotte is she started in suburban New Jersey and was raised by intellectuals who are not particularly enthralled with animals. And I was the one who was born and I wanted to have animals. I loved horses in particular. And I had a pet goat and a pet donkey who I called Eeyore, by the way, and always wanted to go to veterinary school. And so I went through high school, and then I spent a lot of time with a veterinarian who ended up being a great mentor to me. And so I applied. So I didn't have a 4.0. I think I had like a 3.5, and not too many people, my parents supported me, but not too many advisors had a lot of faith that I could ever get into veterinary school or law school for that matter. And but I had supportive parents, and so I applied to every undergrad that had a veterinary school, and I got into all of them except the two that are the Ivy Leaguers. And I have a big brother, and I said, where do I go? I could go to Illinois, I could go to Florida. There's just so many places. He says, California, that's kind of a no-brainer. So I drove across California with my brother and his wife. Arrived there as an undergrad. I majored in chemistry and had a great experience. I love UC Davis. I got into vet school right away, worked there. And that's what I was going to be, as a veterinarian. I just love being a veterinarian. I love interacting with animals and people. And we did have one class in, I think it was third year, where we had Dr. Jim Wilson, who is a veterinary attorney, and taught us about animal law, taught about zoonoses, taught about employment contracts. And I thought he was fascinating and kind of kooky. Who would ever do that? And so then I graduated from UC Davis, and then I went to spend a year in Guelph, where I froze to death, but had a great time doing a large animal internship there. And then got a phone call from my mentor in New Jersey, who was the owner of an equine referral practice. And he said, Charlotte, you want a job? And I go, oh yeah. So I went back to New Jersey. So I did a full circle. I worked for him for several years, and started thinking, what am I going to do for the rest of my life? Am I just going to be an equine veterinarian? I mean, and I was in a good practice, so there was great opportunities to work on some really good performance horses, but there was just something missing. And it turns out my brother's a lawyer, and he's a business lawyer, and I thought what he did was kind of interesting. And I've always loved strategy and operations and negotiations, and thought that it would be great. And then I was thinking of Jim Wilson, who I thought was a little quirky, and said, you know what, that would probably be pretty cool to amalgamate the both of them. And, veterinarians are not always their best advocate. And they're also, like many professions, focused on their professions. Veterinarians work so hard. They're so compassionate, empathetic, do the right thing. And being a veterinarian is really tough, right? Because it's not only dealing with the pet owner, but you have great responsibilities vis-a-vis public health. And I think sometimes people forget that. And I think sometimes veterinary students forget that. And I teach at veterinary schools, and I remind them, that you are important, in your little world of veterinary medicine, but our impact is, how do I want to say, it's expansive, right? Because we impact so many other parts of society, whether that's certainly the One Health, but also legal aspects, dog parks, are there law issues with the rabies, dog abandonment or animal abandonment, animal cruelty, I mean, we're in the midst of it, which I think makes it hard to be a veterinarian because you have so many competing interests and ethical dilemmas. And, we're just human beings like everybody else. It's a tall, certainly a tall order. And we're responsible for so many species and need to be aware of so many species. I mean, you graduate from veterinary school, you might decide to be a companion animal veterinarian or equine veterinarian, but you are made aware of all the other, the species and the diseases, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, I decided to go to law school and I went to the University of Pennsylvania. So I did get into my Ivy League school eventually. Had a great time at Penn. It was a great education. Wonderful. It was totally different from veterinary school because it's case-based learning, which I had not been used to, but it was a great experience. And then ended up working actually with Jim Wilson, Dr. Jim Wilson, who was in Yardley, Pennsylvania, worked with him a couple of years. And then I opened up my own practice. And while most of my expertise is in business negotiations, so I help veterinary practitioners and veterinary associates negotiate all sorts of things, employment agreements, buy, sells, that kind of thing. I do teach at schools. I lecture. Oh, sorry. I also lecture. Kenya. I also lecture. Isaac, can you get Kenya? Oh no. So I also lecture at various meetings, and I lecture on lots of things, right? I lecture on veterinary malpractice. I lecture on ethical issues. I lecture on zoonoses and some of the risks associated, certainly with that.
Right. Wow. So you came full circle with Jim.
In so many ways.
So many ways. Okay. So you are a DVM and a JD, so a veterinarian and a lawyer. And a lot of people, especially probably some of the younger folks in the audience, may or may not know about all the different types of lawyers, just like, say, a veterinarian can practice in so many different sections, a physician can practice in so many different sections, but a lawyer can as well. So in the One Health space, where people of all different backgrounds come together and work towards a common goal of preventing and solving health problems, I'm curious, from the lawyer aspect, from the law aspect, how can collaboration with lawyers be started? Like, how do you even approach a group of lawyers and say, hey, do you want to join this group? We're working towards health, resolving health problems.
So I'm glad you asked that question, Deborah, because there's lots of similarities between the legal profession and the veterinary profession in that regard, right? So if you're a pet owner and you bring your animal to a veterinarian, cat, dog, gerbil, horse, whatever it is, you just think a veterinarian is a veterinarian, right? You don't actually necessarily realize, well, there's equine veterinarians. And by the way, there's equine veterinarians that kind of focus in racehorses versus dressage versus 3-day eventing versus hunter jumper. And you have companion animal veterinarians, right? That and you have feline veterinarians that are exclusive and exotic, ones that kind of, specialize. And so what I explain to people is law is very much the same way. And the way I think of it is I say, when you go to veterinary school, you learn about all the physiological systems, right? The cardiovascular system, and dermatological system, all of them, right? We learn about systems, and each system has their own rules of principle or own principle. So for example, you wouldn't treat a cardiac patient the same way you would treat a patient that has a dermatological, and your workup's different. You're looking for different things. You ask for different questions, you different tests. Well, what I say to people is, like, law is the same thing. You've got family law, you've got constitutional law, you have criminal law, you have tort law, you have contract law, there's many, there's, tax law, there's many areas of law, and each area of law is driven by its own set of physiological principles. So when you are looking for an attorney, you really want to look for an attorney that is doing, or a large part of what they do is the area that you. So if you want to buy or lease a piece of real estate, you should look for a lawyer that in their bio, that real estate law is a big part of what they do. Now, just like in veterinary medicine, you can have a generalist, right? So you can have a generalist at a small animal, large animal, the whole gamut, right? Or you can find a veterinarian that is particularly a specialist, right? You can find a cardiologist, you can find a neurologist, et cetera. So I think people need to understand that the way the veterinarians are structured, the law is really the same way. So if you're going to seek out a lawyer, you should seek out a lawyer that has content in your area, because legal principles are like physiological principles. And you apply principles only after you've got the content. And knowing the content is more important than anything. So when you look for lawyers, don't talk to them about, oh, I need a contract, because that's a treatment plan. That's like your patient, your pet owner coming to you and say, I need an antibiotic, right? It's the exact same thing. You don't know what you need. Let the lawyer decide what you need and execute. But it's really a soaping, the subjective, the objective, the assessment, and the plan. So that's going to mean a lot to veterinarians who are listening to this, but it's really approaching exactly the same way. So when you're looking for attorneys, you want to talk to them about the content and your problem. Let them figure out how to treat your problem. We tend to jump the gun and say, oh, well, I need a contract and I need this and I want you to do this. I mean, lawyers are not tools. I mean, yes, you can find a lawyer that's a tool, just like you could find, just a doctor that'll give you steroids and antibiotics. That doesn't mean you're going to get a diagnosis. And what matters is the diagnosis. You can hire anybody to treat anything, but if you got the wrong diagnosis, you're going to get the wrong treatment. So the most important part of hiring a professional is getting someone who can understand your content, or you can educate them about the content. They are engaged intellectually in understanding what the content is, what the problem is, so that they can make an assessment in the backdrop of having legal principles, just like you as a veterinarian make an assessment in the backdrop of physiological principles, and then they can help you find or work with you, and it should be collaborative in figuring out what is the best treatment plan. So they might have multiple, contract might be one of it. It might be one of, certainly many things. But, the law, just like veterinary medicine, is an intellectual engagement exercise from the beginning to the end. It's not okay, here, just do a contract. That's a steroid and antibiotic. There's lazy professionals everywhere, right? And so I think that's the best way to, it's like what are some of our issues? Why would we need to retain legal counsels? And that's what an attorney does. They put together your concepts, your problems with legal, certainly with legal principles.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for going through that. I think that's going to be very helpful for a number of people. So since there are so many different types of lawyers, as you had mentioned, in the public health, One Health, global health space, are the ones that might be the first to look up and reach out to if we are trying to prevent and solve complicated health problems? Would they be more like, lawyers that are focused on international relations or international law or constitutional law? Like, could you provide a little bit more advice on that?
Well, so I guess it depends what issue you have, right? Is it a cardiovascular issue? Is it a GI issue? And this is why many times, you hire a generalist, and the generalist will help you select the right specialist for whatever, whatever issue you have. But it might be, an environmental lawyer. It might, it depends what's the problem. Are you trying to advance legislation? Are you trying, what is it that you're, really trying to fix here? Or what is your problem? It's, and then let the experts kind of figure, this is, this is what you need. Or I think we should refer you to an attorney that really focuses, here is a patent trademark attorney. It really depends on what your problem is. So you present your problem, just like I present my dog that has diarrhea. And then I let that veterinarian say, well, I think we need to, we're going to need to do a barium study. We're going to need to refer them to a specialist because nothing we've done over the last 2 weeks has been effective. We don't really know what's going on, and we think we need to bump it up to the next level. And so you want to work with generalists that are passionate about what you do, that show interest. It's not like you're like checking the box and you're just a client that they need. And it, right? When you see, I don't care what profession is, whether it's an architect, whether it's a plumber, somebody who's really engaged, loves what they do, and wants to help you. And there's plenty of lawyers out there. And, let's face it, right? You know this better, that we are one health. We're an ecosystem, and it is so important how we function together for the safety of the human race and animals and the planet. And it's hard, right? Because there's lots of conflicting interests, and there's lots of people that have their agendas, and you can always count on greed and power. You know, those greed and power always win, unfortunately. You know, it's important to educate people that you're not in like a little silo or in a vacuum. Everything you do impacts, you know, has a rippling effect, you know, for miles and miles and miles.
Yeah, definitely wise words there. So it sounds like starting with the generalist is the way to go, especially with such a topic like One Health. So that's very, very helpful. And then from there, they could provide extra feedback. And if you need a specialist, then you go that route. Excellent. So coming from both worlds, you have lived a very diverse life with diverse experiences. And I'm wondering, for the rising stars in One Health today, do you have any words of wisdom, any pieces of advice for them?
Now is your time. Now is your moment, because I think finally we're getting people sensitized to climate change, right? And climate change is everywhere, right? That's the impact of all of us on this earth. And I think, you know, it's hard to make a difference if people are not willing to listen. You could be the best advocate. It's all about timing. And I do believe we are in a good place from a timing perspective. And get out there and keep up the good fight, and don't get, you know, discouraged, and, you know, just be engaged and be passionate about something. Maybe you're just passionate about a specific aspect of it, and network and have mentors and have sponsors and talk to people. And because you never know who's out there who's going to you know, help you. So I was at a wedding a couple of months ago, and there was a veterinarian who and he is like only focused in fish. I mean, like really fish. And he has all these ideas about the ocean and how to save the ocean. And I learned so much about all these. I just think it's fascinating, all the things that people are doing out there in order to save our planet, save species. There's a lot of people out there doing good work, but you got to filter in all the way down to, you know, your local bakery store. It's got to, everybody needs to be, and schools, right? Teaching they are the next generation. They're going to save our planet. Those of us that have been parasitizing off our planet are not necessarily going to save it, because we'll be gone by the time it matters.
Very true words. Yep. Just get out there, everybody. That's what we heard today. Get out there.
Do it.
Let's do it. The time is now. Thank you so much, Dr. Lacroix, for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure to hear your thoughts, hear your story. It's been super inspiring.
Well, thank you for the opportunity, and I really appreciate it. Thank you very much, Deborah.
A pleasure. Onwards and upwards. I'll see you next time.
Bye.